Hi, Virgo. There's a convergence point approaching in your timeline, and what's gathering at that intersection carries the weight of everything you've been building toward without knowing you were building. I'm not talking about another chapter. I'm not talking about incremental progression. I'm talking about culmination. The kind of moment where multiple threads that have been running parallel suddenly weave themselves into something you can finally hold, something you can finally name. The oracle is showing me finality, not as ending, as completion of a cycle that's been turning longer than your conscious awareness has been tracking. You were guided to this transmission because there's a frequency in your field that recognizes itself in these words. The architecture of synchronicity doesn't deliver messages to the unprepared. You're here because some part of you, deeper than thought, older than this version of yourself, knows what I'm about to reveal. Ground into your body right now. Because what I'm channeling isn't comfort, it's confrontation with magnitude, with the reality that you're standing at a threshold that asks you to metabolize everything you've experienced up to this point and alchemize it into something that only exists on the other side of integration. The cards are revealing culmination energy, not the artificial kind that gets manufactured for the sake of narrative satisfaction. The authentic kind that emerges when all the variables finally align, not because you forced them, but because the work you did in silence created the conditions for alignment. I'm seeing imagery of rivers, multiple tributaries that have been flowing in their own directions, carving their own paths through landscape, encountering their own obstacles. And now they're all moving toward the same delta, the same point of merger. And when they meet, when they combine their individual force into collective power, that's when everything changes. Your chest just tightened, didn't it? Let me decode what culmination actually means in the context of your specific reality right now. This isn't about one area of your life. The cards suggest this is systemic. Multiple domains that you've been working on simultaneously, some consciously, others without realizing you were doing the work, are reaching completion points within proximity of each other. For some of you, this reads like professional and personal converging, like the career momentum you've been building is finally reaching visibility at the same time that a relationship dynamic is reaching clarity. Not because they're connected directly, but because the internal shifts that made professional growth possible also made emotional maturity inevitable. You've been becoming someone different, and that becoming is about to be undeniable to everyone who's been watching from the outside, wondering when you'd finally arrive. For others, this culmination reads like the ending of a specific cycle of suffering, not healing in the gentle, gradual sense, but the hard stop that happens when you finally exhaust every possible way to negotiate with a pattern and realize there's no negotiation left, only choice, only the binary of continuing or stopping completely. The cards suggest that for many of you, this finale includes severance, clean cutting away of something that's been draining you through its sheer persistence in your reality. Not because you finally got strong enough to leave, because you finally got tired enough to stop pretending staying was survivable. There's a difference. Strength is a story we tell about choices. Exhaustion is the truth that precedes them. Drop a scissors emoji in the comments if something just clicked about what needs cutting. Now, let me go deeper into what finale actually suggests versus what you might be projecting onto that word. Finales in your mind probably carry associations with resolution, with things working out. with the satisfying conclusion where loose ends tie themselves into neat patterns and you get to exhale knowing it was worth it. But the cards aren't showing me that kind of finale. They're showing me the kind where you arrive at the end of what was and have to sit in the space between what was and what's trying to emerge. The liminal, the void, the place where old identity has dissolved, but new identity hasn't solidified yet. That's the finale, not the happy ending. The death of what you've been so you can become what you're meant to be. And death, even necessary death, even chosen death, carries grief. The cards suggest that part of what's culminating is your relationship with who you used to be, the version of you that survived by being small, by being accommodating, by contorting yourself into shapes that fit other people's comfort. That version is dying, maybe already dead, and you're in the process of realizing that you've been mourning her while simultaneously trying to resurrect her, trying to bring back the person everyone knew how to love instead of becoming the person who requires people to evolve to love her. The finale is you finally letting her stay dead, finally admitting that resurrection isn't what you want, that you don't want to go back to being digestible, that you'd rather be alone in your full truth than surrounded in your performed version. Something in your throat just constricted reading that, didn't it? Let me reveal what the cards are showing about the mechanics of how this culmination might unfold. There's no single event, no dramatic moment where everything shifts simultaneously and you get to point to that moment as the before and after marker. Instead, there's a series of small confirmations, things clicking into place so subtly that you almost miss them until you look back and realize that the landscape around you has completely reorganized itself. For some of you, this reads like external validation finally arriving for work you did months or years ago, like seeds you planted in darkness suddenly breaking through soil in multiple places at once. You're not doing anything new in this moment. You're receiving the result of what you did when no one was watching and you had no proof it would matter. That validation might come as opportunity, as recognition, as someone with influence finally seeing what you've been building and deciding to amplify it. But the cards caution against mistaking external validation for the actual victory. The victory is that you kept building even when no one was watching. The recognition is just confirmation of what was already true. For others, this finale reads like internal knowing, solidifying into something unshakable. You've had glimpses of this knowing before, moments where you saw yourself clearly, where you understood your value, where you recognized your power, but those moments were fleeting, easily disrupted by external doubt or internal sabotage. What's culminating is the permanence of that knowing. The cards suggest you're reaching a point where self doubt can still visit, but it can't move in anymore. Where other people's opinions can be heard, but they don't override your internal compass. Where you finally trust yourself more than you trust the crowd. That's the finale, not the world changing, you changing in ways that make the world reorganize itself around the new frequency you're broadcasting. Tell me in the comments if your body just recognized something it's been trying to tell you for weeks. Now, let me address what the shadow of culmination looks like, because finales always carry shadow. There's a pattern the cards are revealing that I need to name directly. The closer you get to breakthrough, the louder the resistance becomes. Not external resistance, though that might intensify too. Internal resistance. The part of you that's terrified of actually arriving, because arriving means You can't use someday as a shield anymore. You can't hide behind preparation, behind not being ready, behind needing more time to figure things out. Arriving means you have to be the person who has what you said you wanted, and that person has responsibilities the current version of you doesn't have. That person can't make the same excuses. That person can't stay small to keep others comfortable. The cards suggest that for some of you, the biggest obstacle to this finale isn't external circumstance. It's your own addiction to the familiar suffering of almost but not quite, to the safety of perpetual striving without ever having to face what it means to actually possess. So, part of what's culminating is that addiction breaking, not gently, through you finally exhausting your own patience with your own patterns, through you getting more disgusted with your stalling than you are afraid of your success. And that disgust, that's the fuel. That's what finally moves you through the threshold you've been hovering at for months. The cards are also revealing another shadow. The people who've been comfortable with you at your current level are not going to be comfortable with you at your next level. This finale includes loss, not dramatic severing necessarily, but the quiet dissolving of connections that were built on a version of you that no longer exists. People who related to your struggle won't know how to relate to your sovereignty. People who bonded with you over shared wounds won't know what to do when you're no longer bleeding in the same ways. And you're going to have to let them go, not with malice, not with judgment, but with the clear understanding that growing means outgrowing. That evolution means leaving some people at the altitude where you met them while you continue climbing. That's part of the finale, too. The recognition that not everyone gets to come with you. And that's not cruelty, that's ecology, that's the natural order of things. Your jaw just clenched, didn't it? That's the part of you that wants to argue, that wants to believe you can bring everyone, that wants to stay connected to every person who's ever mattered. But the cards don't show that as possible. They show you having to choose between staying accessible to the old connections and becoming available to the new altitude. You can't do both. The frequency is different. The requirements are different. The version of you that exists at the next level isn't compatible with the dynamics you've been maintaining at this one. So the finale includes grief, real grief, for people you love who can't meet you where you're going, for parts of yourself that have to die so the new version can breathe, for the comfort of the familiar, even when the familiar was slowly killing you. Let me reveal what the cards suggest about timing, keeping in mind that cards don't predict the way clocks measure. There's an acceleration in your field. The energy that's been building isn't building linearly anymore. It's compounding, which means what felt like slow progress for months might suddenly feel like everything happening at once. The cards suggest that this culmination energy is already active, not coming, active. You're in it right now. You might not see it yet because you're still orienting to the old pace, the old patterns. But if you pause and actually feel into your reality, you'll notice things are already different. Conversations are landing differently. Opportunities are presenting differently. Your tolerance for bullshit has shifted. Your capacity to stay in situations that don't serve you has diminished. That's the culmination already in motion, not in the future. Now, what reads as finale is the point where you finally see what's already been reorganizing itself in the background while your attention was focused elsewhere. So the question isn't when this arrives, the question is when you finally stop looking ahead and notice what's already here. Comment, I see it, if something just shifted in your perception reading that. Now, let me reveal what this finale asks of you specifically. First, stop waiting for permission. Stop waiting for perfect conditions. Stop waiting for certainty that it'll work out before you commit fully to the direction you're being pulled. The cards suggest that part of what's been delaying your culmination is your insistence on seeing the full map before taking the first step. But maps don't exist for journeys like this. You get the next step revealed when you take the current step, not before. Your finale requires you to move in partial darkness, to trust the pull even when you can't see where it leads, to choose based on internal resonance rather than external proof. That's not recklessness. That's how transformation works. The caterpillar doesn't see the butterfly before entering the cocoon. It just responds to the biological imperative to dissolve. You're at the cocoon stage, and you keep peeking out, checking if it's safe, wondering if you should wait a little longer. But the card suggests that waiting isn't neutrality. Waiting is choosing against the momentum that's trying to carry you forward. Second, integrate what you've learned. Not intellectually, somatically. The cards show that you've been accumulating wisdom through experience, but you haven't fully embodied it yet. Things in your head that your body hasn't metabolized. This finale requires embodiment. It requires that the knowing in your mind travels down into your nervous system, into your cellular memory, into the way you move through the world without thinking about it. You can't fake integration, and you can't rush it, but you can stop resisting it. You can stop explaining away your intuition. You can stop negotiating with what you know is true. Third, let the finale be what it is instead of what you think it should be. You have an image in your mind of what breakthrough looks like, what success looks like, what arrival looks like. But the cards suggest that what's actually culminating doesn't match that image. Not because it's less than what you imagined, because it's different, more complex, more nuanced, more real than fantasy could ever be. If you hold too tightly to your expectation of how this should look, you'll miss the actual gift of how it is looking. So, as we close this transmission, here's what the cards want anchored in your awareness. You're at a finale, not the ending of your story, the ending of a specific chapter that's been repeating itself in various forms for longer than you want to admit. This finale includes completion of cycles, severance of patterns, death of old identity, and the emergence slow, uncertain, uncomfortable of something new that doesn't have language yet. You can't force this. You can't rush it, but you also can't delay it anymore. The momentum is already moving. The only question is whether you move with it or get dragged by it. And moving with it requires surrender, not passive surrender, active surrender. The kind where you consciously release your grip on how you thought this would go and trust that what's trying to emerge knows its own shape better than your mind does. This is the finale you've been building toward. Not because the universe decided it was time, because you did the work that made finales inevitable. Because you chose differently than your pattern demanded enough times that the pattern finally broke. And now you're standing in the gap between what was and what's forming. And that gap is uncomfortable. It's supposed to be. Discomfort is how you know you're in transition, how you know you're not just rearranging furniture in the same room, but actually leaving the building entirely. Your whole nervous system just recognized something, didn't it? Comment what shifted when I said that. You were pulled to this reading because you needed confirmation that what you're sensing is real, that the pressure you're feeling isn't anxiety about something going wrong, but recognition of something completing. This is the finale, not a finale, the finale. The one where everything you've been becomes the foundation for everything you're becoming. And you're ready for it. Not because you feel ready, because you're here, because you're still standing after everything that tried to break you, because you chose yourself enough times that choosing yourself is starting to feel natural instead of rebellious. That's the victory. That's the breakthrough, not what happens next, what you've already survived to get here. The finale is confirmation of what's already true. You're not who you were, and you're never going back. Everything has been preparing you for this threshold. Now walk through it. Gratitude for receiving this with the depth required. The finale is here. You're standing in it. Stop looking for it ahead. It's beneath your feet right now. Feel it, honor it, and let yourself finally arrive.